can look at any of the information that we've spoken about, you'll be able to access this via the internet. So welcome to everybody who has joined us in the room for this fantastic virtual industry immersion. We're going to learn about careers in the rail industry, and we've got some fantastic presenters who will be providing with lots of valuable information. So as it says on the screen, make sure you can hear today's webinar, check your audio settings and follow the prompts. I'm just going to click through. And I'd like to first start by acknowledging the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation. We pay our respects to elders, past, present and emerging, who are following the footsteps of those who came before. And we thank them for the opportunity to conduct CEAV business on their lands. The Industry Immersion program, which this event today is part of, is funded by the Department of Education and Training and aims to provide young people in years 7 to 10 and in VCAL within usually Victorian government schools, but we've actually opened the program up to all schools now to engage in a range of industry immersion experiences that build your knowledge about the world of work. And on behalf of the Department of Education, CEAV is proud to bring this program and this industry immersion virtual webinar to you today. We'd also like to thank the department for allowing us to use Cisco WebEx so we can host this virtual event. So what are we going to learn about today? So you're in for a real treat. We've got some fantastic information that will be shared with you by some of our guest speakers who are industry professionals. So you're going to learn a lot about the different opportunities, probably jobs that you've never considered or maybe don't know anything about, or perhaps you do know a little bit about careers in rail but you'd like to know more. You're going to be provided with information about why we need more people working in the rail industry, and that's part of the labour market information that will be presented today. You're also going to hear about some exciting courses that are available for students who are interested in pursuing a career in rail. As Amelia mentioned at the start of the presentation, if you have any questions at all, you can type your questions in the chat box or the Q&A box, and we will be able to answer them throughout the presentation and towards the end. So keep an eye on the chat box also, as we'll be popping in useful links and information in there if there's anything that you would like to come back and take a look at later on after the presentation. So I'd like to introduce our guest speaker, Caitlin Ryan, and she's supported by her esteemed colleague Gordana and also another guest, Cass. So I'd like to hand over to Caitlin, who works for the Rail Academy, to share a lot of exciting and interesting information about careers in rail. So thank you, Caitlin.
Thanks, Jen. Nice to be here. Hi, friends. As Jen mentioned, I am Caitlin Ryan. So I just want to introduce myself. We're going to get a bit up close and personal. There's about 14 of us here today. So I'll just give you a bit of background. I've worked in rail and construction for the past 7 years. I currently work for the level crossing removal projects, and my role is the Rail Academy Manager. And I'm going to be running through today's session with you. So we're going to cover off a fair few things. It's going to be a little one-sided, so I'm going to try and keep you as engaged as possible because I will be doing a lot of speaking and you will be doing a lot of listening. Next slide. Thanks, Jen. Thanks. All right, so let's just cover a few basics. So in Victoria, there are more than 27 companies that operate in the rail sector. So these include Metro Trains, which is our metropolitan public transport provider, V-Line, which is located in regional areas, and Yarra Trams, who are all passenger operators. And we've also got manufacturers like Bombardier, who are responsible for building the actual vehicles, so that's the rolling stock, and some construction contractors that work alongside the rail lines to do works like the level crossing removals. In Victoria at the moment, there's a lot of growth and changing, and it's very rapid. So, more so than any other point that we've seen in history. And it's critical for these changes to be made to meet transport demands. And there's an exciting amount of major transport infrastructure projects that are happening in Victoria at the moment. And this represents about a $70 billion investment on road and rail projects. So, I'm just going to ask now if you just want to share in the chat box what major transport infrastructure projects you might know about. If you've got an example you might like to share, I've given you a hint already. I work for one, level crossing removal projects. But does anyone know of any others? I'll give you a hint. If you've been to the Melbourne CBD, you may have seen the Metro Tunnel project that is happening. Some other examples that we've got is the Rail Projects Victoria that are in charge of doing the Ballarat line upgrade, the proposed suburban rail loop. We've got the Regional Rail Revival. There's also the Murray Basin Project, a Port Rail shuttle, and a fast rail to Geelong. And also in Victoria, we build all of our rolling stock. So we're currently undertaking a huge project to build the new high-capacity metro train, which will be hitting our network soon. So this massive overhaul of the transport network is creating tens of thousands of jobs across all types of sectors, from construction, engineering, to human resources and administration. Next slide, thanks, Jen. So we're going to just get a little bit around in here, unpack a little bit about where we're starting off from our knowledge base and work out what we know. So I'd like to play a little bit of a guess the role. So I'm going to tell you a couple of things about this job role. The person in this job role moves trains between the yards and the platforms. They also marshal the trains, which is where they would hook and detach carriages, and they also direct and move trains, organise and conduct safety checks. You've probably seen people in this position in Southern Cross, if you've ever been there before, to catch a train, either a V-Line service or a metro service. Does anyone have any idea what job role might undertake these few tasks? If you've got any thoughts, you want to write it in the chat. All right, well, I'll just give you the answer. So, no, it's not a train driver. No, it is. Next slide, thanks, Jen. We'll just cover off what that is. So this job role is actually a shunter. Now, this is a bit of a strange one. You've probably not heard of it before, but shunting is the job of safely moving trains between the yards and the platforms. So shunters marshal trains, they hook on locomotives, and they detach defective carriages. They also direct and move freight trains, they organise rail freight, and they conduct safety checks. So shunting work is often hectic, and most of the time is spent outdoors on the track and moving between stationary trains. Next slide, thanks, Jen. So we've unpacked a little bit of a role, and the reason I picked the shunter role is because it's one that you probably haven't heard of before, but there are some important things to know about making some career decisions, and that's investigating occupations in which you're interested in. So the rail industry's business is really about transporting people and freight to their destination safely and efficiently. And there are a number of rewarding career opportunities that exist in the rail industry, and there are a variety of pathways available for entering the rail workforce. So having a look at this slide and some of the pictures that are there, I want you to have a think about who you might see when you take a train or a tram, who you see at a train station, or who you might see beside the track. And if you have an example of one that you'd like to share, I'll just get you to pop it in the chat box. I think everyone's keyboards are busted today. Maintenance workers, yeah, that's a good one. Thanks, Jen. We'll go to the next slide. So really, if you're unsure about a starting base, this is a great place for us to start. So this is a job role of a track worker. So rail infrastructure is a vital component of the rail sector. It involves construction and regular maintenance of infrastructure assets and equipment, which includes things like track, tunnels, level crossings, bridges, platforms, and land around the track and other facilities which allow passenger and freight trains to run safely and efficiently. Track workers build, inspect, maintain, and repair tracks for heavy and light railways. They also may lay and repair tracks at tramways, quarries, sometimes in mines, and install and repair signals and other equipment. A track worker would spend a majority of their time outdoors, and the work can be quite physically demanding. And this job would probably best suit someone who enjoys working outdoors across a range of general labouring maintenance duties. You need to be happy to work outside in rain, hail, or shine, and not be afraid to get your hands dirty to contribute to a team. Next slide, thanks, Jen. So, the track worker job role requires no formal certificates, degrees, or licenses on application. However, it does require some on the job training. I have picked this job role to talk with you about today because it's interesting, unique, and suited to different sorts of personalities and pays really well. You'll see here in this slide the entry requirements and the skills needed and the generic skills related to work which are listed. Few things to key things to point out here is there's no specific requirement for previous experience and knowledge when it comes to applying for a role like a truck worker. However, there are some prerequisites that employers will have candidates go through when they're going through an application process. So this would be things like a behavioural interview. There would be the need to have a police check, a medical examination, and workers need to be of 18 years old and 18 years of age and older. So you'll see here this job role is an entry-level job role, which means that once you're employed with a rail operator, they would put you through the necessary training to obtain the qualifications, such as a Certificate 2 in rail infrastructure, which you would need to be able to do your job. Next slide, thanks, Jen. Alrighty, so train driver. So this role is probably a very exciting one that I get asked the most amount of questions about when I do these sorts of presentations. So a train driver operates or drives a train carrying passengers or freight. It's a great job for someone who likes to see different places. Train drivers drive along a public or private rail network and they need to run things to a schedule. Train drivers have to be punctual, they need to be reliable, able to work in a confined cabin for many hours on end, and enjoy solitary working conditions for much of the time. They need to have the skills to be able to problem solve quickly and logically in an emergency, and train drivers need to be excellent communicators and have quick reflexes. A normal day for a train driver could start as early as 2 a.m. And if you were doing a morning shift, it could take an hour for you to prepare your train, which would mean you would go about by doing things like checking the brakes, identifying any faults, and making sure it's safe to drive on the network. So every driver needs to understand how the train works so that if there are any issues, you need to know how to fix them. It's also important to keep up to date with things like changes in the weather and be across any issues on the line. It's a big responsibility being a driver. You're in charge of a 160-metre long train, and if you were to look through your rearview mirror as you're sitting in the cab, the driver cab at the front, you would be seeing people piling onto your train, which means you would be responsible on a normal journey for nearly 1,000 people. So, some of the other tasks and duties for this role are reporting any defects. So, if you've ever been on a train or a tram and there have been some issues with the doors not closing or not opening, those sorts of things need to be referred back to engineers and management. There's also some adjustments that need to be made when you need to have undertaken for repairs. So, reporting those things back to your depot manager or your supervisor are really important. Also, getting the train from A to B on time is really key. You also need to monitor the train speed and ensure safe travel. I don't know if you've ever noticed being on a train, when you look out the window, you don't actually have speed signs like you would when you're on the road driving a car. So you need to be very aware of your environment and the conditions in which you're driving in. You'd also be required to make announcements to passengers and liaise with onboard staff. And there's exchange of information with other drivers, station staff, and sometimes even security. Next slide, thanks, Jen. So, the average shift for a train driver really depends on your employer. Fatigue is a really important part of managing people's safety. So, on average, a train driver shift would vary between 7 to 14 hours depending on your journey. So, there is no train driver license, and the job role requires no formal certificates or degree. However, it does require some on-the-job training. Rail operators will advise for this position as it arises, and like I said before, while there are no specific prerequisites for entry, you'd be required to go through an application process. So you can see here some of the generic skills that they would be looking for. They would want to be able to see that you're able to identify and solve problems, make decisions, plan and organise, and work in a digital world. And with all roles within rail, you need to have a really strong regard for safety. So, the average salary for a train driver role varies. Usually, when you enter in as a trainee train driver, you would be paid about $65,000, and that would go up in increments as you qualified and then became a qualified driver. Next slide, thanks, Jen. So, this job role here is a signal maintenance technician. So, the role for a signal maintenance tech, they are responsible for installing and maintaining complex rail signalling. So, rail signalling in Victoria is everywhere. There's level crossings and communication systems that use control train movements while ensuring safe and efficient operations on the rail network. A signal maintenance tech would also carry out routine maintenance and tests on signals and track points, and they would be the main point of contact when responding to a breakdown and a fault. I'm not sure if you've ever seen a level crossing go down and then the traffic build up, and it be quite a long, lengthy period of time before it can come up. So they're really responsible for being the first people out on call to address those sorts of breakdowns and faults. Next slide, thanks, Jen. So, a signal maintenance technician needs high level communication, interpersonal and problem solving skills to work with other staff. They also need the ability to identify and analyse risks and make corrective actions. There is a need for computer skills, and they also need to be able to use and maintain administrative systems and have good time management skills to schedule work priorities to ensure deadlines are strictly adhered to. So, as the other roles, because I have picked 3 entry-level job roles today to talk with you about, you do need to be 18 years of older or older. There's no specific requirement for the employer. Usually they require a Year 10 completion. And once employed, you're required to complete your necessary studies. So for a signal maintenance technician, there is an apprenticeship pathway which requires you to do a Certificate 3 in electrotechnology, which is the qualification that you would do to become an electrician, as well as studies for a Cert 4 in electrical rail signalling. Next slide. Thanks, Jen. Now, regarding applying for a role, there are a few things to know about the selection process. The selection process for roles might include things like an aptitude assessment. So I just wanted to talk to you a little bit about this, what this means. So an aptitude assessment is sort of like a personality test. And it's not, the kind of test that you would do with friends online to see if you're, spirit animal is a puppy or a kitten. It's the kind of personality test that you would do for us to be able to see what your safety critical behaviors are like. And what that means when you break it down is we want to be able to understand whether or not your actions and choices that you make are potentially risky. So, what a risky behavior might look like is there may be a question in an aptitude assessment to understand something about whether or not you were, as a scenario, potentially running late and saw an opportunity to run across a road and not cross at lights. Now, for a rail safety critical role, for a rail operator, they would really want to see some consistent ingrained safety critical behaviours in your day to day. So, those are the sorts of things that they would be looking for in personality types. Now, a behavioural interview. Now, this is where you would be asked about your experience. And what that means is they want to find out if you've got the skills for the job you're applying for. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that you have to have had a job role exactly the same, but if you had a job role in the past where you maybe worked part-time at your local fish and chip shop or had a job at McDonald's or Kmart, it's about the skills that you learned as part of that role and applying them to be relevant for the role you're working in. So that could be something as simple as being able to let a potential new employer know that you're a good team player because you worked with a crew at your local McDonald's when you had that job part-time, and you understood safety because you understood that when you carried out certain cleaning and using chemicals, you had to follow a certain process. So there are things that you can do that are really transferable. The other is a police check, and this would just to be, make sure that there's no criminal behaviour. I suppose one good thing about driving trains is you can't really steal them, but we probably wouldn't want you to. So we just like to make sure that you are a good citizen of the world. There would also be a medical examination, and this is really to make sure that you're fit and healthy because you would be carrying out a safety critical role like a train driver. It would be nothing worse than having 1,000 people on your vehicle and you slumping over having a heart attack. So we need to make sure that you are really healthy and fit. And again, workers need to be 18 years of age and older. And this is because our industry operates under what is called the Rail Safety National Law. So this requires an employer to ensure that each worker has the knowledge and skills required to carry out the work safely. Next slide, thanks, Jen. So we've unpacked a fair bit of information today. I've carried out and told you a little bit more about where we're at in Victoria. You know, there's 17 million trips across all forms of transport a day in Melbourne, and it's projected that there's going to be more than 30 million by 2050. We've also got a range of projects that are happening across our state, level crossings, metro tunnel. We were rattled through, we covered them all off. Because of this, there is a need for us to diversify how we employ, which in our case for today means really connecting with secondary school students to let you know a little bit more around the different career options that are available. So I'd like you to take a few things away with you today. Here are some questions about the careers you're interested in that I'd like you to think about when you're researching. So I would be looking at job ads and asking myself, what qualifications are required? what is the best thing about this job? So, for example, if you really enjoy being outdoors, you'd want to look for a job that's got outdoor responsibilities, but also special skills and abilities that are needed. Are you required to be able to have cash handling responsibilities? So that's around being responsible with money and being able to give change correctly if you're in a customer service role. And what other jobs might be related in this area? So we've got a video, Jen. We'll just go to the next slide. Now, this is a video that highlights many opportunities available in the rail industry and focusing on a journey from A to B. We'll give it a crack and we'll see how the lag is.
Jen, you just need to unmute. If you just unmute your microphone, Jen, we should be able to hear it.
Am I unmuted now?
Yep.
Right. Sorry, guys. We'll try it again.
Getting one train to take you from point A to point B requires more than 120 different professions. There are the people that you regularly see, station staff, train drivers and customer service officers, and people like me, the track workers. As a track worker, I'm responsible for doing the physical work of building and maintaining infrastructure assets and equipment, such as rail track, bridges, tunnels, platforms, level crossings, and overhead wiring structures. If you are mechanically minded, like physical work, and enjoy working in teams, this might suit you. But there is a vast range of professions working across 4 key disciplines: operations, infrastructure, customer service, and rolling stock. Let's look at some of the positions that exist. Communications advisors develop copy for marketing, advertising, and promotion. They produce publications, newsletters, media releases, and much more. The communications advisor role works with government agencies, stakeholder groups, local councils, and the community. Signal maintenance technicians maintain the signal network and undertake fault finding, maintenance, and construction. Whether you are a qualified electrical tradesperson, not fully qualified, or seeking an apprenticeship, there are opportunities in signal maintenance. The day-to-day work of rail engineers can be different, depending on their area of expertise. Whether your qualifications are as a mechanical engineer, electrical engineer, civil engineer, or a telecommunications or electronics engineer, your skills help provide technical advice to ensure the safe and capable maintenance, construction, and upgrades. These are just some of the more than 120 roles that exist, and with the Victorian government currently delivering an unprecedented number of major rail projects, there are going to be many new entry-level and professional positions becoming available in the rail industry, in both the government and private sectors. A career in the rail industry offers great opportunities, whether you have qualifications and experience, have just graduated, or are seeking an apprenticeship. Find out more by visiting railacademy.vic.gov.au.
Great, thanks, Jen. So, as you can see, just through that little animation there really are a lot of job roles you probably haven't even thought of yet. So, if you'd like to get some more information, Jen will just be pulling up our slide deck there. You can visit our Rail Academy website and toggle under our careers section, and there you'll see a range of collateral that actually describes the different types of roles that are available, what a day-to-day looks like, what an average salary might be, and also some areas within science, technology, engineering and math that you might not have even thought of that relate to some of those roles.
We've got one question, Caitlin, maybe just while we're waiting for those slides to come up.
Is this from Anna?
Yes.
I've responded to her.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you.
My pleasure. Okay. Excellent. So I do encourage you to have a look at the Rail Academy website there. We'll just jump on to our next slide.
Is that working, Caitlin? Can you view it now? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Okay, so if you have got an interest in joining our industry, why not explore some opportunities about studying while still at secondary school? So in Victoria, we've developed a Certificate 2 in Heavy and Light Rail Fundamentals. So this is a vocational education training in schools program that provides secondary school students with an interest in rail and construction. The course is aimed for Year 10, 11 and is designed to encourage you to consider joining the rail industry after you finish school. The 2-year part-time course counts towards a VCE qualification and provides you with a basic knowledge of the rail industry in Victoria. The curriculum is currently taught by Swinburne and sees you undertake training in all areas of railway operations, including customer service, safety awareness, rail infrastructure, and rolling stock. We currently deliver this on Wednesdays between 12:30 and 4:30 p.m. There is also a video that we'll go through just to give you a bit of an understanding of what the students who are currently enrolled in the course's experience is like. So we've currently got 21 students enrolled in the course, and they're from schools from all over Melbourne. They're from Geelong, Berwick, Ringwood, and they attend a weekly class, and they also undertake some hands-on practical training at our bespoke facility in Newport. So if we could just jump to that slide, Jan, and we'll watch that quick video of the pilot group, or I'm happy just to continue on and we can share the video link in the chat box.
Can we give it a shot?
Okay.
Certificate 2 in Heavy and Light Rail Fundamentals is a vocational program that will be delivered in secondary schools to give students an appreciation of the range of opportunities available in Victoria's rail industry.
So we've got 2 full years of which involved in structure, involved in planning, involved in operations, involved in customer service.
Part of the course that excites me the most is about probably conversing with others into a more adult sort of environment. So getting ready for the workforce, really, for the rail work.
The aspect I'm most excited about for students for this course is the variety of different options that they'll be able to work with the rail industry once they finish the course.
And I think that the opportunities that are currently coming through within rail is, definitely a step in the right direction for jobs for these young people that are coming through.
It's a really useful facility because it's got a operating essentially track network, so we can have people practice on the real life network without actual trains running.
The course excites me the most is just being there, just having fun and learning new things.
I'm honestly excited to do everything that there is to do and just soak in all the information and just get everything that I need to get into the career of being a trainer.
Work, rail, probably construction.
I've always just been passionate in rail, so I've researched and just done everything I could to find a course like this to help me get into the future job that I want to do.
I would choose to be a train driver. I've always wanted to be a train driver.
We right?
This winter blitz, the Little
Oh,
Crossing
no.
Rental project is going bigger than we've ever
Stop.
done before.
Okay, thanks. Thanks so much. So that's just to give you a bit of an idea around the Certificate 2 qualification. As I mentioned, there's currently 21 students enrolled in the course, and at the end of the program, they should be really well placed to make some career decisions about whether or not they're keen to go on and study to become, say, an engineer if they've got an interest in science or design engineering, or potentially looking at some entry-level job roles that are available in the area of infrastructure, customer service, operations, or rolling stock. Now, there's lots of opportunities that are coming up because we do have that $70 billion investment that's happening in Victoria at the moment, but also we've got a policy position in our state of Victoria where we actually build all of our rolling stock here on soil. So that's a really important thing because there's a lot of hands and hard work that go into building a tram or a train. We'll just go to our next slide. Thanks. Yeah, great. So in order for us to give you guys a really good idea of what it's like, we do offer a range of rail career taster days. So we hold several career exploration days each year for student groups to experience what our career opportunities in our industry look like. So there are certain things you can do. We've got virtual reality packages where you get to put on your goggles and see what it's like to have a train whiz past you, undertake some basic knowledge of what is required when you need to wear personal protective equipment, which is kind of uniform that rail workers wear, that orange high vis, so that you're very easily noticeable. You'll also be able to understand how a train driver applies mathematics to their day job when calculating things like braking distance and weight of a vehicle. And also we've got the new high capacity metro train out there, so you can actually stand on board and look and feel at what it's like. We also have a range of activities where we split you up into groups and we build a section of track using tools and equipment just like they would as a track worker. Next slide. Thanks, Jen. All right, my friends, this is sort of the end of the formal component of my presentation, and I have just been talking this whole time. So I'd really like to open up now and see if anyone has got any questions that they'd want to ask me. Any.
I can see one student asked, Caitlin, how do they follow up more information about the courses? Do they contact Rail Academy directly, or is that through school?
Yeah, absolutely. So for our Certificate 2 in Heavy and Light Rail Fundamentals, the Vet in Schools program, it is best to send forward an expression of interest. We'll just pop the email address in the chat box there. You can send an email forward to Rail Careers, or if your teacher, coordinating support worker or vet coordinator at your high school has any questions about it, they can get in touch and we will offer some information sessions in the new year. So that's probably the best way.
And what about work experience? Is there opportunities for work experience for young
Work
people?
experience is very difficult in rail because we have to be 18 years or older. So when it comes to structured workplace as part of the Vet in Schools program, the practical activities that you get to do as part of your studies cover off that, because we've got a bespoke facility with very special equipment that's available. But actual general work experience would need to be looked at more closely and more likely in sort of corporate support areas. So you may be able to do work experience in the area of rail with a legal team or a finance team or a HR team. But the responsibility that we've got for the safety of our employees and our passengers in a rail network is really critical. So we can't take any risks for anyone who's not a full-time employee.
Yes, but I would suggest maybe to young people who do have an interest in rail and they're thinking maybe one of those outdoorsy jobs, even if you can't do work experience in rail, you might do another type of work experience placement and make sure that you're comfortable doing heavy lifting, working outside, starting early and those type of things. Would you agree, Caitlin?
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said, there's 27 different companies that are involved in rail in Victoria. So that's from the rail operators that move the passengers, the companies like Bombardier, Downer and Alstom that build the rolling stock, to contractors that, deliver equipment and build widgets and gadgets. There's a whole host of people who are in the big supply chain. So work experience with a rail operator like V-Line, Metro or Yarra is quite tricky for us to manage, but there are lots of other opportunities available.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you. If there's any more questions, pop them in the chat. We can come back to them if we need to, but I'd just like to thank Caitlin so much for presenting this morning. It's a really, really valuable amount information that you've shared with young people, and I know I've learned a lot about different careers. I didn't know what a shunter was, so I learnt something new today as well. And I think that the takeaway is that there's so much more to learn. Like you said, there's so many companies within rail, and we're moving people around our city and building things that make our city better. So investigate, see what's out there that suits you, take a look at all the information that you've been provided with today. Go to the Rail Academy website. There is so much info in there that will help you. And a huge thanks to Caitlin for presenting, and to Gordana and Cass for being here today as well. And we'll forward some information on to your teachers that they can pass on to you with these handy links that you can come back to. So thanks very much, Caitlin.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you, guys, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you. And just before students head off out of the room, I'm just going to share one more little piece of information with you all regarding some online resources that we have to accompany the information that you've learnt about today. So we've developed some resources that you might have seen in classrooms at school, but if not, you can access them and have a look, because we have information in these booklets that are specifically for students. So you can watch a lot more of these little clips that you just, like we watched today in the session, with interviews with real people working in the industry. Okay, so you can see what they're saying about their jobs. You can learn more. So the more you learn, the more you know, the better equipped you'll be for life after school. There's some short little activities in there to reinforce your learning on when you're learning about the transport industry and about careers in rail. And there's also information in there about planning for work experience. So students in the room today, usually in year 9 and 10, so you should be thinking about work experience, even though work experience probably didn't happen for you this year due to the way the world is at the moment. You can still do work experience in year 11. So I suggest that everybody does work experience, and it's a really great addition to your skill set and something great to put on your resume. And it also gives you information about Job Outlook, which is a very handy website. If you haven't looked at it yet, after the session today, you should definitely jump on and have a look at Job Outlook as well. Lots of information in there about a host of jobs in rail, in transport, but in many other industries as well. So take a look at that page also. we actually have booklets in 11 different industry areas. So we've learnt about transport today, but there are another 10 industry areas that have those video links, those activities that you can go and take a look at. So I'm sure you'll find something that's relevant to what you're most interested in after finishing school, or something you just want to learn more about. So finally, we'd love you to complete an online survey about the webinar this morning and give us some feedback. The link will be in the chat box. So if Amelia or Dave, could you pop that in there now? Then the students that are still with us, if you could just quickly complete that, it will only take you 30 seconds. So if you could complete the survey, that would be fantastic. And again, a huge thank you to our special guest presenters from Rail Academy. It's been great having you all here with us this morning, and we hope you have found the information very valuable and that it's inspired you to learn more about careers in rail, and that you take those next steps to cement those careers and do those learnings so you're prepared for life after school. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Jen. Thanks, everyone.